coaching services for Can Do. She is a board-certified coach, holds a PhD in organization and management, and a master's in public health. She's also a certified intrinsic coach and intrinsic coach mentor with more than 20 years of experience in the health and wellness industry. Rosie, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here with us today. As Lisa said, we explore thriving in your total well-being for today as well as in the future. With the time we have together, we will explore 4 things: what well-being is, why it matters, how you can thrive in all areas of well-being, and how your thinking influences your well-being. With that, let's start with looking at what we mean by well-being. 2 leading researchers from the Gallup organization teamed up a couple of years ago and did research in 150 countries. What they found is that there are 5 universal elements of well-being that you see listed here. Career well-being is liking what you do each day and having meaning and purpose in your work or how you spend your time. Social well-being is having good, strong relationships and love in your life. Financial well-being is managing your economic life well and is really more about having a sense of financial security with your finances than traditional measures of wealth. Physical well-being is having enough energy, both physically and mentally, to get things done each day that are important to you. And you'll see we've added in emotional well-being because although Gallup includes it as part of physical well-being in their definition, it can be helpful to pay specific attention to this area when it comes to thriving. So we will be doing that today. And community well-being is feeling connected to the community where you live. And the key is that each area of well-being is interconnected. We can't focus on just one area without having frustration because each element profoundly impacts the others. Yet when we typically think about healthy living, we think primarily about physical well-being. However, physical well-being is trumped by career well-being and profoundly impacted by the other areas of well-being. The well-being research has found that while 66% of people are doing well in at least one of the areas of well-being, just 7% of us are thriving in all 5. And if we're struggling in any one of these domains, as most of us are based on these statistics, it damages our well-being and wears on our daily life. But when we can strengthen our well-being in any one of these areas, we will have better days, months, and decades. The point is that we're not getting the most out of our lives unless we're living effectively in all 5. So I invite you to think about yourself and how you're doing in each area of well-being. With that, we're going to take a brief poll just to see where you're at today.
Okay, thanks, Rosie. Now we're going to take a quick poll, and you should see the poll on your screen here shortly. In how many areas of well-being would you say you are thriving? Please select one.
There's no right or wrong. This is just your little reality check for today.
Okay, looks like almost everybody's voted. We'll give you a couple more seconds here, and then we'll close the poll. All right. We are going to close the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you now. Can you see that, Rosie?
I cannot. It says you have to hide poll results to enable screen sharing.
Okay. Well, I will just tell you then that, let's see, I've got to move this. All right. So 70% of you said that you would say you are thriving in 1 to 2 of the areas, and 30% in 3 to 4 of the areas.
All right. So nobody's thriving in all 5.
And you're not alone.
Well, you're not alone. So so good. Well, so at least it sounds like if we have 70% people are doing well at least one, well, that's kind of consistent with the research. So let's look at ways that we can thrive in more areas of well-being, since there's opportunity here with the group that we have today. And as we continue today, I invite you to notice what comes up for you and feels like it might be a fit and meaningful for you to enhance your overall well-being, because we're going to be reviewing lots of things, and pay attention to those that particularly resonate with you. But before we go too far, let's take a moment to first create space to provide a little more clarity around what you're wanting for yourself with regards to your well-being and quality of life. What if you were thriving in all areas of well-being, and how might your life be enhanced if you were? So if you are able, I invite you to just take a moment and get comfortable. If you're sitting, uncross your legs if you can, sit back comfortably in your chair, feet flat on the floor, let your hands just kind of relax in your lap or at your sides. If you're standing, just try to stand in a comfortable position. If you can, gently close your eyes, or not, just gaze off softly, and just take a couple slow, deep breaths. And as you do, let your shoulders relax away from your ears. Let your face and jaw soften. Let your tongue fall off the roof of your mouth. And now just fast forward to some point in the future. It could be 6 months, a year, or more. Think about what your best possible future looks like for you, considering all areas of your life and well-being. What types of things are you doing in that best possible future? What is your energy like in that best possible future? Who are you spending your time with, and what do those interactions look like? How are you feeling in that best possible future? And perhaps most importantly, who are you being in that best possible future? And just notice whatever's coming up for you, what you're starting to see for yourself. And I invite you to just keep those images with you and gradually open your eyes and bring yourself back to the present. And keep whatever was opening up for you, or maybe beginning to open up for you, as we continue to explore the importance of well-being. A few years ago, Dan Buettner, who is a local guy here from Minnesota, teamed up with National Geographic and longevity researchers to identify pockets around the world where people lived measurably better. They identified these 5 different regions in the world they called blue zones, and they studied the largest data sets available from people who live in these areas. And what makes these regions unique is that in these blue zones, they found that people reach age 100 at rates 10 times greater than in the United States. And they're not just reaching 100, they're thriving. So after identifying these blue zones, they took teams of scientists to each location to identify the lifestyle characteristics that might help explain their longevity. They found that the lifestyles of all Blue Zones residents, although they were in different regions of the world, shared 9 specific characteristics they call the Power 9 principles. Move Naturally deals with moving your body regularly, doing things you enjoy rather than forcing yourself to pound it out on a treadmill if you hate it. People in the Blue Zones don't really go to health clubs, but they are constantly moving. Know your purpose. Do you have clarity about what matters to you, and is your life about something bigger than yourself? Kind of along that best possible future perhaps you were starting to imagine for yourself. And we'll explore this a little bit more as we go along, because this is a huge component to longevity and thriving well-being. Downshifting. It's important that we hit the pause button and take time to reflect and be, because we are human beings, not human doings. The 80% rule is really about eating, and they eat until they're 80% full. So they're not sitting on the floor like Thanksgiving dinner feeling horrible. They're basically content, and they'll probably be hungry again in about 2 to 3 hours. So this lends itself to eating more like 4 or 5 nourishments throughout the day more frequently. Plant Slant, their diets are mostly plant-based. Wine at 5, this isn't about sitting in the corner drinking by yourself because you had a bad day, but wine, particularly some red wines, have lots of antioxidants, And people in blue zones have about 1 or 2 glasses per day, so it's in moderation, but they have it with people they care about, so it's very closely connected to social well-being. Right Tribe also deals with social well-being, having at least 3 or 4 other strong, close relationships in your life to support you. Community blends both community and social well-being and having a sense of belonging, and Loved Ones First is pretty self-explanatory. So hopefully you can already see that thriving in our well-being is much more than how we typically think of health. It is far more than just kale and CrossFit. So let's look a little more then at why well-being matters. We know that thriving well-being is bigger than food and exercise, but it is also essential in providing us a solid foundation on which we can build so that we can accomplish and do the things that matter to us in our lives. I invite you to imagine that these two figures represent 3-tier wedding cakes. At the top of each cake are the outcomes that you are wanting to achieve in your life. There are really 2 parts of ourselves that contribute to whether or not we achieve those outcomes. The work or world side, this is us as a doer out there doing things for other people, and the self side, us taking care of ourselves, our whole self. If your mission was to get that cake in one piece to $1 million wedding, which cake would you ultimately want to be responsible for? My guess is that you all just picked figure A. And why is that? Because it's more stable and has a better base. And notice what that base is. It's the self side. Yet we are so conditioned in this country to sacrifice ourselves at any cost, thinking we are helping. We will sacrifice sleep, our own exercise, hobbies, our children's events, and more to work more hours, do things for other people, and we think we are doing good. But how long can you continue like figure B before you run out of energy and your cake basically topples over? We can do that in a pinch, but it's not sustainable over time. So you probably wouldn't be living a long, thriving life like people living in the blue zones either if you continue to operate with your cake more like figure B. So your self side or your well-being matters profoundly. And if you keep depleting yourself, you won't have the energy to enjoy the people and the things that matter to you most in your life, to live into that best possible future. I can't tell you how helpful this visual has been for so many of our clients in changing how they see themselves and really their story around things related to their well-being. They start to look more at one choice at a time and what choice will honor me or best fuel the self side of my wedding cake. So eventually it starts to become less about shoulds and have-tos and willpower and more about making choices that serve you better from moment to moment. We're going to come back to this again in August during our webinar called Live a Balanced, Resilient Life. So I won't say too much more about that today, but it's a really powerful visual to keep in mind. In addition to looking at well-being in this more holistic way, it can also be helpful to look at it from the perspective of daily well-being. In his recently released book, Tom Rath explores this idea of being fully charged, and that when we're fully charged, we get more done. We have better quality interactions, we have a sharp mind, and a strong body. And he says that on days that we are fully charged, we experience high levels of engagement and well-being, which radiates and positively impacts those that we care about. And we've learned a lot from research that I just even gave you about the blue zones and well-being, about practices that lead to long-term well-being. But where people frequently struggle is translating that research into their daily routine. But now this new body of research that's emerged focusing on daily well-being or our daily experience, which is really the product of both our positive and negative experiences throughout the day. And it's measured by asking people whether they have emotions like happiness, enjoyment, stress, and other feelings within a given day. And daily well-being and meaningful change are really created in moments and days, not years and decades. And there are 3 key conditions that differentiate the days when we have a full charge from our typical days. The first is meaning, and that kind of goes along with career well-being, but it's doing something that benefits another person. Interactions is the second condition, which involves creating more positive than negative moments, so kind of aligned with social well-being a little bit. And then energy is making choices that improve our mental and physical health. And this research involved surveying over 10,000 people to see how they were doing across these 3 areas, and found that most people, not surprisingly, are struggling on a daily basis. And if they're struggling on a daily basis, it's going to be challenging to thrive in the multiple dimensions of well-being. So I want to look just briefly at each one of these for a moment. As I mentioned, meaning as a condition to being fully charged is doing something that benefits another person. However, this research found that only 20% of people report that they spent a lot of time doing meaningful work yesterday. And this is unfortunate because career well-being, again, is really important on our overall well-being. It is the trump card. People who are thriving in their career well-being or have meaningful and purposeful work are 50% more likely to be thriving overall. And much of what contributes to thriving career well-being is feeling like we're making a difference or meaning for others. In fact, research from Harvard found that the most important contributor to us being engaged at work is simply making progress in meaningful work. So it's more of the journey than the destination. And the good news is that we all can create meaning in our work or how we spend our time each day. Because meaning is really more of an evolutionary process that grows day by day. It's not some grand purpose that suddenly falls in our lap or enlightens us. Sometimes we think about it that way and we miss opportunities. But having small wins throughout the day allows us to generate that meaningful progress. And I'll speak more to that in a little bit. And so the next condition to being fully charged and thriving in your daily well-being is our interactions. Again, this involves creating more positive than negative moments. And this is another area of opportunity because only 16% of people reported having extremely positive interactions in the past day. If you think that every interaction we have has this ripple effect out into our network, and life is composed of millions of individual interactions, these moments provide your day with either a positive or a negative charge. If you look at moments as 3-second windows of time, there are about 1,200 moments per hour or 19,200 moments in a day. That's a tremendous opportunity to make positive change. And people who report having great interactions throughout the day were nearly 4 times as likely to have very high well-being. And the third condition for being fully charged and having thriving well-being is energy. Again, energy refers to making choices that improve both our mental and physical health. So it's kind of like the definition we reviewed earlier for the dimension of physical well-being. However, only 11% of people report having a great deal of energy in the previous day. So clearly most people are operating well below their capacity, or their wedding cake is on the verge of toppling over, so to speak. So if we think of physical well-being in terms of energy, think about how you're showing up, both mentally and physically. Every single choice we make determines the amount of energy we have available to us to put towards what matters most in our lives, towards creating meaning and having quality interactions and living into that best possible future on a daily basis. Is your energy depleted? So you're showing up like George Costanza here from Seinfeld, who's just this nasty curmudgeon who just wants to get a nap under his desk? Or are you full of life and energy and having a positive effect on those around you, like Richard Simmons here? Perhaps wardrobe choice set aside. People who have very high energy levels in a given day are more than 3 times as likely to be completely engaged in their work on that same day. So if you want to make a difference today and really for years to come, it's essential to put your health and energy ahead of everything else. In other words, it's essential to tend to that self side of your wedding cake if you're going to be any good to anyone else. Now that we know why well-being matters and the conditions that we need to be fully charged, let's look more at how we can better thrive then in all areas of well-being while keeping these principles in mind. Just as we learned from the daily well-being research, a lifetime of thriving well-being starts today. It starts with each moment and each choice that we make. Yet too often we are actually the biggest threat to our own well-being by allowing our short-term decisions to override what is best for our long-term well-being. And I'll speak more to that dynamic in a little bit. But people with the highest level of well-being are able to find short-term wins that are consistent with their long-term objectives. So it becomes easier to make the right decisions in the moment. So they have that clarity of that best possible future, and then they align their choices accordingly. And again, not about being perfect, but they have that out in front of them. So for example, if one of your long-term goals is to have better physical health, focusing on the short-term win can be helpful. In this instance, maybe realizing you're wanting more energy during the day may lead you to deciding to jumpstart your day with exercise and a nutrient-rich breakfast, because that's clearly going to give you some energy. So you're fulfilling a short-term want that is also aligned with what you're wanting long-term for that best possible future. That said, it's important to be able to clarify your goals in a way that will better support your choices from moment to moment. So I've been talking for a little bit, so with that, we're going to take another short poll. So I'm going to let Lisa take over and run that poll.
All right, here we go. I'm going to bring our second poll up. Would you say these statements are goals? All right, looks like everybody's voted, and 50% of you say yes, they are. 50% say no, they aren't.
All right. Well, the 50 that say no way, Jose, you've probably heard our stuff before, or you're very intuitive. So, and the 50% that say they are, you're among good company. Most people would say they are, or they might say no because they have to have more specifics to be a SMART goal. But from a coaching standpoint, what I invite you to consider, and bear with me for a moment, is that none of these are actually goals. These are all strategies that you think doing these types of things will give you some kind of result or state of well-being. That state of well-being or answer to the question, what am I wanting, is really your true goal. And once you have clarity on what you're wanting, it acts almost like a North Star, guiding your daily choices. The problem is that what we typically think of as goals on the previous slide, again, are really strategies, and we get very caught up in that. For example, let's say you want to lose weight. So you may typically think of your goal as I want to lose weight, but that's really a strategy. Because if you just expand it a little bit further and say, well, what is it that I'm wanting for myself with regards to weight loss? Maybe it's more confidence. Maybe it's feeling better in my clothes. Maybe it's having more energy. And after you explore this for a little bit, let's just say, for argument's sake, you decide it's really about your energy, that you're wanting to have energy to enjoy your life and all the things that matter to you. Well, now that you have clarity on that, it's easier to bring that clarity into your life to guide all of your choices, because there are many things and behaviors that impact your energy. Here's another way to look at this in general. We know that energy is one of the core components of being fully charged in our daily well-being. If you consider that really every single choice you make either boosts and recharges or depletes your energy, you can start to see how that can guide your choices better in all areas of well-being. For example, when it comes to social well-being, there are certain people or quality of interactions you have with people that can either boost or deplete your energy. The current state of your financial well-being can boost or deplete your energy. Certain foods deplete your energy where others boost your energy. Most movement and exercise can also boost your energy, but perhaps you need to rest and recharge your energy, so you want to do something like yoga or stretching, or you need to sleep. So we could go on and on and on. So going back to your true goal, whatever you decide that is you're wanting for yourself, whether that's energy or something else, that can act like your North Star. And then you can look at what choices will best boost or recharge your energy so you can have more of what you're wanting in your life. Not in some far out date in the future, but today, in this moment. And if you think about anything, for example, that runs on batteries, a laptop, an iPad, a tablet, or a smartphone, as the day goes on, the battery gets depleted. And as this happens, the device starts running a little slower, the quality of the pictures and the screen might go down, and overall performance not as well. But if you recharge it throughout the day, it gets a boost and is back operating at close or full capacity. So although we as humans are not machines, this can be a good analogy for us, because if we keep going and don't find ways to recharge throughout the day, our capacity diminishes and we aren't able to effectively reach those outcomes we're wanting for ourselves, or that top of the wedding cake. And we certainly aren't able to effectively thrive in our well-being. I'm going to go back to the different areas of well-being, and we start with career well-being. As I mentioned a little bit ago, that people who are thriving in their career well-being are 50% more likely to be thriving overall. And career well-being is liking what you do every day and having meaning and purpose in how you spend your time. And as I said, it is the trump card of all other areas of well-being, because if you are struggling or suffering here, it negatively impacts every other area of well-being. And you know, it's interesting, my son was so excited when he turned 4, because that meant that he could get and wear a special field trip t-shirt at his Montessori school and get to go on field trips outside of the school. And this is a picture of him last fall, the morning of his first field trip. He was jumping out of his skin with excitement. And I think of this as a visual. What will it take for you to feel this excited about your work, to feel like this about going to work every day? He could not wait to get to school that day. Sadly, many people do not feel like my son. Only about 20% of people are thriving in their career well-being, and more than 66%, or 2/3 of us worldwide, are clock watchers. In other words, we're disengaged. And so it's a really sad state to be in. And what happens when we disengage? We become apathetic. Kind of like this highway worker, this painter here. Can you imagine what happens to the quality of patient care and customer service when we lose our meaning in our work and become apathetic? It's pretty scary to think about. And many times people turn to their organization or their managers and put all of the ownership on them for their engagement. And yes, they play a role. However, we are in the driver's seat and need to own our own engagement. Well, how can we do that? First, we find opportunities to use our strengths. People who use their strengths every day are 6 times as likely to be actively engaged or thriving in their career well-being, and they're 3 times as likely to report having an excellent quality of life. Secondly, we find our purpose. People with thriving career well-being have deep purpose in their lives, and they have a plan to attain those goals, which all ties in with the daily well-being research, with meaning being one of those conditions for being fully charged. So gaining clarity about what you want for yourself and what gives you purpose can be really helpful here. And then also looking at how you connect with and live the values of your organization can help too, so you kind of see where you fit into the picture. And going back to meaning and connection, it's really about purpose. So let's look at an example of people intentionally creating meaning over time and the difference that it makes. One research studied employees who worked in the cleaning staff in a hospital system. Some of the employees there simply viewed their job as a paycheck, but others considered their work to be a true calling. Well, what was the difference? The difference was whether or not employees veered from their formal job description and became involved in meaningful interactions and relationships with the patients and visitors. When these employees identified with being an important part of the overall care team, it completely transformed their work and identity. So the point is that we all have the power to create meaning in our daily lives, to enhance our career well-being and own our own engagement. And it starts with asking what we can give, looking for ways that your unique talents, background, expertise, dreams, and desires can serve, local needs, organizational needs, or whatnot. And another way to enhance our career well-being is really being intentional about how we spend our time. In today's hectic world of infinite information and endless distraction, it can be easy to spend an entire day just reacting and responding to all the demands that come our way. But what matters in life is more about what we initiate today. That can be everything from striking up a conversation that leads to a new friendship, or maybe sharing an idea with someone at work that ends up turning into a new product or service, or maybe investing in supporting and developing someone else to succeed and more. In fact, our ability to create a positive charge for other people is almost directly proportional to the amount of time we spend initiating instead of responding. Think about it. If you're busy throughout the day and bouncing from one thing to the next all the time, you're probably not focusing on meaningful or constructive activity that matters to you and are likely not giving your full attention to the things that matter most. And one study found that having a purpose in life actually protects against the harmful effects of plaques and tangles on our memory and other thinking abilities. So engaging in meaningful and purposeful activities promotes cognitive health in old age so we can live healthier for a lifetime. Let's move on to social well-being. Again, our social well-being is dependent on our entire network. For example, the odds of us being happy increase by 15% if a direct connection in our social network is also happy. The odds of us being happy increase by 10% if a friend of our direct connection is happy, so a friend of a friend, so to speak. And the odds of being happy increase by 6% if a friend's friend is happy. And because we tend to synchronize our moods with the people around us, our emotions influence one another throughout the day. You know, we all probably know someone who brightens the room when they leave, and the impact that that negativity has on others. Kind of like this cartoon here, Janice, we want to be mindful that we're not infecting people with a bad hair day, so to speak. And we know from many research studies that social connectedness has a profound impact on our physical and emotional well-being as well. In fact, lack of social connectedness or social isolation is considered a risk factor for multiple chronic diseases. And lack of social connectedness can also increase stress levels and lead to behavior that increases health risks, such as increased tobacco and alcohol use, reduced healthy behaviors, maybe not eating as well, not exercising, not getting adequate sleep, etc. It's also important to note that isolation can also mask other symptoms and increase the delay in us seeking care for our physical and emotional health issues. When it comes to social well-being, in order to have a thriving day, we need 6 hours of social time. Just think about that for a second. People go, I don't have 6 hours. Well, 6 hours includes work. It includes home, it includes on the phone, it includes talking to friends, it includes sending email and other communications, so it could even include Facebook and other ways of staying connected. And the single best predictor of well-being and engagement at work is not what people do, but who they are with. How often do you hear people say, the job's okay, but I love the people I work with, and that helps enhance the meaning that you find in your work too. We also know that one friend can't do it all, but you also don't need a ton of acquaintances. It's really about 3 or 4 close relationships. So consider the following questions when you think about your social well-being in your network. How are you contributing to thriving relationships with people you work with? How are you contributing to thriving relationships in your personal life? And perhaps are there any relationships that you may be neglecting that really are needing more attention? All things to think about when it comes to intentionally creating and thriving your social well-being. And our social well-being is also very much interconnected with the second condition for being fully charged on any given day, which is interactions. And another aspect that influences the quality of our interactions is whether they are positive or negative. And research has found that it's more about the ratio of positive to negative experience that makes a difference. When we experience negative emotions, such as those maybe when we're being rejected or criticized, our bodies tend to produce higher levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone that really shuts down much of our higher level thinking and sparks our defense mechanisms to kick into high gear. However, when we experience a positive interaction, our bodies produce oxytocin, which is a feel-good hormone that improves our ability to communicate, our ability to collaborate and trust other people, and the oxytocin can actually lead to more expansive thought and action. When it comes to the ratio, it takes 3 to 5 positive interactions to outweigh every one negative one. And sadly, neuroscientists estimate that nearly 85% of our daily thoughts are negative. So a simple formula to try to keep in mind is try to keep at least 80% of your conversations focused on what is going right. Think about how many times you start out a meeting or you talk about your day and it immediately go to all the things that aren't going right or problem solving. What if you turn that around and look at what is going well? What's going well today? What's going well in my life? What can we learn here? And just see what happens. And probably common sense, but when it comes to the quality of our interactions and our social well-being, it's important not to take for granted our existing relationships. They do require regular and frequent interactions to thrive. And because close social relationships add such tremendous value to our lives and our physical and emotional health, it's important to focus on the people we are with when we are with them, to be fully present. This means first and foremost to use your phone when you're alone. When we're by ourselves, passing time in line or in a solitude moment, using our digital devices is fine and can be a nice distraction. However, when we use them while we're spending time with people, the quality of our interactions declines. In other words, we want to make people more important than the technology. And giving undivided attention to others tells them how much you really value their thoughts and their opinions and even their time. Next, we're going to move on to financial well-being. And this is another important, often overlooked element. Low financial well-being can lead to stress and anxiety, insomnia, headaches, and even depression. People with thriving well-being talk about a general sense of financial security, or lack of worry is another way to look at this, instead of absolute measures of wealth like income, debt, and net worth. In fact, financial security has nearly 3 times the impact of income alone on overall well-being. And irrespective of income, those with high career and social well-being are nearly 2 times as likely to say they're satisfied with their standard of living, and therefore less likely to fall into the keeping up with the Joneses trap, so to speak. And we also know that spending on ourselves does not boost well-being, but spending money on others does. And it's also important to note that sadness may lead us to spend a lot more money on ourselves than we normally would because we're looking for something to make us feel better. And we spend the most when we're feeling the worst. So when you're having bad mood days or days of bad mood, you want to pay attention because it could lead to a cascade of poor financial decisions, which is one of the many reasons why our emotional well-being is so important. And for people who earn less than $25,000 a year, experiential and material purchases seem to produce similar gains in well-being. However, once you get above that $25,000 threshold and as income increases, experiential purchases produce 2 to 3 times the level of well-being when compared to material purchases. And it makes sense. If you think about it, we can relive memories indefinitely. And many times those experiences tend to be closely connected with our social or community well-being as well. So thinking about how you're spending your money can make a big difference in boosting your well-being. And one of the best ways to help with a sense of financial security and therefore thriving financial well-being is to set positive defaults. People who are thriving in their financial well-being tend to take control and assume responsibility for their financial future. Setting positive defaults can include things like having automatic payments going into a savings account directly from your paycheck, or having automatic deposits going directly into a retirement account or college savings account, so you don't even really see the money, it's done for you. It doesn't take an extra step. And if you're looking for additional resources to help with your financial well-being, here are 2 websites that might be helpful. The first is mymoney.gov. This website is a government website. It's free. It has all kinds of tips and resources for managing credit and debt and other financial issues. And the next is mint.com. This website lets you securely enter your various accounts and passwords so you can have a comprehensive look at your finances, even just from your smartphone or computer. It can also help you track your spending and help you create budgets and financial goals. So it's a way of helping you get organized and pay more attention. Now moving on to physical well-being. When it comes to our physical well-being and that energy, it's really about what allows us to effectively manage our physical health so that, again, we have that energy to get things done that are important to us. With keeping that in mind, there's really three primary sources we have for boosting our energy, and that pertains to what we eat, how we move our bodies, and how we rest or replenish our bodies with sleep. We have other recorded webinars, by the way, that go into much more depth on these, including one that's called Live Healthier for a Lifetime that will have some overlap to this webinar. But for the purposes of today, if we go back to what we discussed earlier with looking at every choice with regards to what we put in our mouths, how we move our bodies, and how we rest our bodies as an opportunity to provide the best energy source or the best way to recharge, we'll be on a path to making better choices and thriving in our physical well-being. And one of the best ways to get started is to simply start paying attention. Pay attention to the impact that food, movement, and rest have on you. When you start to pay attention, you'll notice that some foods likely don't make you feel so great. Maybe they make you feel bloated or sit in your stomach or make you sleepy, while other foods you feel great after eating. Same with movement. Some movement may result in you feeling great and energized, while others don't, and so on. You may notice that a certain amount of sleep does you well, another you're struggling. The more you pay attention to what your body needs, not what every research study and infomercial out there tries to tell you, but what is your body telling you it needs, the better you'll be able to make choices that serve you well. So start paying attention to yourself. And we know that our emotional well-being is very much interconnected with our physical well-being and the energy that we have. Having a good foundation of physical well-being can certainly help with our emotional well-being, but the majority of what determines the quality of our emotional well-being really pertains to how we think. So I'll be going into that in a bit more detail in just a few minutes. And our emotional well-being also is closely linked with how resilient we are. So we will be looking at that in more detail during our webinar in August. One of the resources I want to draw your attention to, if you're not familiar with it, that has a ton of free resources to help support your emotional well-being is called HeartMath. They are a nonprofit research foundation that looks at the relationship of stress with heart and brain functioning. They have newsletters, articles, and all kinds of other resources. They also have resiliency assessments that you can take, including the one you see listed here, their Stress and Well-Being Survey, that looks at these various dimensions and then can provide you with recommendations and suggested resources that can help you based on your own results. And finally, the final element of well-being is community well-being. What we know from the research is that community well-being can be the differentiator between a good life and a great one. For example, volunteers feel stronger and more energetic and more motivated after they help others. And we know that well-doing, or helping others, promotes really deep social interactions. It enhances meaning and purpose and really leads to a more active lifestyle while keeping us from being too preoccupied with ourselves. And we also know that altruistic behavior is linked with increases in overall longevity. Additionally, our physical and emotional well-being greatly benefit from volunteering. People who volunteer 100 or more hours per year experience greater longevity, higher functional ability, lower rates of depression, and less incidence of heart disease. So well-doing, if you will, for others helps combat stress and negative emotions. So obviously volunteering, as we just discussed, is one way to support you in thriving in your community well-being, but there are other ways to look at feeling connected to the communities where we live. Another way to think about thriving in community well-being is sustainability. Sustainability pertains to things like recycling, buying earth-friendly products, biking or walking instead of driving, or even carpooling. In other words, we're making choices that help support the sustainability of the community and planet where we live. And another aspect of thriving community and feeling safe and connected to the communities where we live and work is feeling safe. So getting involved perhaps in neighborhood watch programs or community activist programs for safer roads and streets are other ways to help improve a safe sense of community. And another really groovy resource that not only supports community well-being, but also supports your physical well-being is Charity Miles. If you're not familiar with this, it's really cool. It's a free app that you can download for your smartphone that uses your GPS, and it lets you raise money for charities while you walk, run, or bike. So what you do is turn on the app when you're ready to move, and you select a charity. They have a variety to choose from, and then you press start. And it tracks your distance as you exercise and the money you earn. And you earn 10 cents per mile for biking and 25 cents per mile for walking or running. And then when you're all finished, you just accept your charity sponsorship, and then they ask you to spread the word on social media. So it's a pretty cool way to support multiple areas of well-being in one shot. As we start to wrap up today, I want to spend just a few minutes tying everything together with looking at the critical role our thinking plays and whether or not we are able to make choices to allow us to thrive in our well-being. This is something we use a lot with our clients, and they find it really helpful. It's something we call the frame. And we know that how we view or see things is ultimately critical to the choices that we make. So we start in the upper left-hand quadrant here with how we see things, our attitude or our perceptions. How we see things influences how we feel about it. How we feel about it influences our behavior or what we do, and what we do gets us some kind of result. And that result, or what we get, ultimately reinforces how we saw things in the first place. So 2 examples that I like to use for this is, let's say that I am going for a walk in the woods, and I look over and I see a snarly-toothed tiger. How am I likely going to feel? I'm probably going to feel pretty scared. And if I'm scared, what am I going to do? I'm probably going to run like nobody's business. And that's going to get me some kind of result. It might have me out of breath, winded, maybe I'm going to get a leg cramp, an adrenaline rush, whatever it might be that's going to reinforce, holy moly, I can't believe I just saw a tiger, and now I have some really cool stories to tell at barbecues this summer. On the other hand, let's say I'm going for a walk and I look in the woods and I don't see a tiger. I see a cardboard cutout of Tony the tiger from Frosted Flakes. I'm probably going to feel very different. I'm not going to be scared. I might be indifferent. I might be amused. I might be confused. But instead of running for my life, I'm going to do something different. I might keep walking. I might go up to it. So I'm going to get a different kind of result that is going to reinforce, I wonder what the heck a cardboard cutout of Tony the tiger was doing in the woods. Both are completely relevant. What I did in either situation is completely justified and relevant based on how I saw it. If I saw a tiger, of course I'm going to run. If I didn't, why would I run? And the point here is that our typical approach is to jump right here to this do and try to change behaviors. But behaviors are really a downward flow, a manifestation of the underlying thinking. So unless we focus on building a solid foundation, the base of that wedding cake, by looking at how we see things and shifting our perspective, we will continue to fall back on habitual behaviors. Lasting change and thriving well-being doesn't come from simply doing things differently. It comes from seeing or thinking about things differently. And usually when we're struggling, it's because we've jumped right here to the do, right? We've jumped to those strategies. When we can back up and hit the pause button and look at how could I see this differently, usually when I do the work here, the do will naturally come and I don't have to force it. And it will make more sense and will align with our purpose or what we're wanting for ourselves in terms of that best possible future. So let's look at how we see things. Another way that this can be explained is some profound research done by a woman named Carol Dweck from Stanford. And she has found that what determines our success or lack thereof in life boils down to having one of 2 mindsets, a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. In a fixed mindset, we have to be perfect. We value and focus on the results and the need to be the best. And we view failure as a huge threat and see our talents as almost being more fixed, like we were born with them. As a result, it tends to be very rigid or all or nothing thinking. So we will freak out if things don't go the way we think they should, or perfectionism isn't achieved, and we'll tend to be very hard on ourselves or perhaps other people. In a growth mindset, We see perfectionism as a myth, and instead we really value the process and the journey of stretching ourselves and taking on challenges. We embrace mistakes as an opportunity to learn and grow, and we have faith that we can recover from these mistakes. So I've been talking for a while, and so we're going to pause one more time and take one last quick poll today.
Okay, one last poll. Which of the following best describes your mindset?
So we'll give everyone just a couple seconds.
All right. We have 22% say I primarily have a fixed mindset. Another 22% says I primarily have a growth mindset, and 56% says I have a mix of fixed and growth mindsets.
All right, so if I can do the math quickly, it sounds around 80% at least have some fixed mindset. So for the 80% of you that have some of a fixed mindset, let's talk about how you can build a growth mindset, because the great thing is that you can build a growth mindset. So one of the ways to start to build a growth mindset is to start to run little tests to challenge how you see things and the story that you've created that supports having that fixed mindset. So as goofy as this sounds, we've done this with some clients and they actually find it really helpful. So here are some simple yet powerful examples of maybe how you could start to build that muscle, so to speak, to strengthen your growth mindset and really be better equipped to work through the change that you're wanting. So let's say that you have no rhythm, or you feel like you have no rhythm and can't dance. Well, maybe you try taking a Zumba class or some kind of dance class. I actually teach Zumba and hear this all the time, that I'm like, yeah, just make it up, right? And people feel all, oh, and then they relax a little bit. Or let's say you feel like you have no flexibility or balance. Maybe try taking a yoga class. Or perhaps you don't think you can sing well. Well, go somewhere and sing karaoke. Or if you saw the movie, pull an elf and just start singing randomly in public. Or maybe you find you're very concerned with your appearance and wanting to look good and feel like, oh, people will be judging you. Well, intentionally wear a loud, ridiculous outfit in public. The point is that many times our fixed mindset and our need to be perfect comes down to us taking ourselves just way too seriously or becoming anxious about making changes, especially when it comes to our well-being. And we see this a lot with our coaching clients, so we do a lot of work with them to really help them recognize when their thinking is and isn't serving them well and how they can see things differently, even running their own tests of their fixed mindset. But as we start to make changes and challenge our fixed mindset, it's important to recognize a phenomenon that will likely occur. This phenomenon that has us feeling challenged with making better choices is something in coaching we call the gremlin. The gremlin is really a catch-all term we use, which refers to the part of our brain and thinking that wants immediate gratification. It wants to have lost weight yesterday. It wants our finances to be in order yesterday, and the list goes on. And if it doesn't have immediate results, then it hates change and would prefer the status quo, even when the status quo isn't serving us well. The gremlin is usually our first thought. The problem is when we act on that first thought, because it's not usually coming from our higher level brain functioning or our best thinking. So if we can start to better recognize what is guiding our thinking, we are better able to intentionally create moments that align with our purpose and our best possible future, instead of just giving into habits and autopilot thinking. And how we do that is actually pretty simple, but it takes some awareness and some practice. The beauty of the gremlin is that once we become more aware of our thinking, it really ceases to have the power and hold on us that it once did. So we can pause and ask ourselves, is this coming from my best thinking, or is this coming from my gremlin? And it actually takes just pausing 3 to 5 seconds to disable the dominance of that gremlin and create a space for better thinking, but it will feel like an eternity to your gremlin. So simply starting to build a practice of pausing a few seconds before you act on a thought can help build this muscle. And the more you get to know your gremlin, the more places you'll see it show up. And you'll also start to learn what things tend to trigger your gremlin. An example, one of the common manifestations of the gremlin is all or nothing thinking, or that fixed mindset. We'll hear things like, well, I overslept and I didn't have the full 30 minutes to exercise, so I'm not going to do anything. Or I blew my diet eating bad food, so I might as well just call today a loss and keep eating poorly. In other words, they make one or two choices that don't serve them well, and their gremlin just kicks into high gear and has them throwing the entire day out the window. But if you remember from earlier, we have 19,200 moments in a day. So we have many more moments to regroup and kick our gremlin to the back seat so we can get back into the driver's seat where we belong. Recognizing and building the skill to pause and disable the dominance of the gremlin is something we work on a lot with our coaching clients because it gets in the way of them making choices to support their thriving well-being. And in the spirit of embracing a growth mindset and making better daily choices to support thriving well-being, this is really another good motto and reminder. It's about bringing better thinking into your life, not trying to achieve perfection, because perfection is really a myth, and thank goodness we're all beautifully human. And so with the last couple of minutes we have, I just want to briefly make you all aware of how Can Do Health Coaching can support you or support your patients or support your loved ones in thriving and well-being. We provide 6 months of highly personalized coaching that includes 3 in-depth in-person sessions at the beginning, midpoint, and the end of the 6 months, and then every 2 weeks in between phone sessions, all focused on supporting the unique needs of our clients and really helping them shift their thinking to look at all areas of well-being. And although we have 5 coaching tracks people can choose from to enroll in, we don't coach the track. There's not a cookie-cutter program booklet. We coach the person and then provide quality handouts, exercises, resources in a way that's meaningful for the client. And our foundation is coaching the whole person. Sometimes we actually use the analogy that our coaching is kind of like physical therapy for your thinking, because we are helping our clients recognize when their thinking is and isn't serving them, and then how that translates into their choices. Some of the changes that our clients experience include shifting how they value and think about themselves, or the self side of that wedding cake. They start paying attention to their internal hunger cues. They start paying more attention to the impact and functional role of food. They start recognizing their gremlin and their fixed mindset and start disabling that. They shift from using food for comfort as fuel for their body, and they start to normalize their relationship with food and movement. And so our normal fee is $350 for the 6 months, and I know from the list that most of the participants today are Fairview employees, but not everyone. So I just want to let you know that for the Fairview employees that are on today, if you're participating in the Active for Life campaign, you can enroll in Can Do at a 40% discount through the end of August and pay only $200. And then additionally, if you're on certain Preferred One health plans, you may be eligible to receive 100% of that fee reimbursed after you complete 80% of the program. And then for those of you who are not Fairview employees, if you decide you want to enroll within 2 weeks of today, you can participate at a $50 discount, so for only $300. And either way, we accept payment plans, and also mini health savings account and flexible spending account plans can be used to pay for the program. So if it's something you want to learn more about, we have more information on our website. We also have a recorded informational webinar you can watch. We also have regular free in-person informational sessions, and you can also register for a free test drive conversation so you can try out the coaching and see if this type of coaching is a fit for you. So hopefully this gives you some new ways to think about thriving in your well-being. But I would be remiss if we didn't kind of end with this question. If there's anything that's really standing out to you or popping out for you, you can type it in the question box. Or if you have any specific questions, we have just a couple minutes left. We'd love to hear from you. So we'll just give it a minute and see if anybody has anything they want to type in. And while we're doing that, I'll just kind of flip through and let you know that these are our coaches, myself and Cheryl Dornfeld. We do also have Can Do Health Coach, Rosie Ward, Can Do Health Coach, and Cheryl Dornfeld, Can Do Health Coach fan pages on our Facebook page. And we have a regular Can Do Facebook page as well as tons of resources on our website. So another place where you can get some inspiration for yourself too. So we'll just give it one last minute and see if there's any questions that are popping in. Otherwise, I'll let Liz wrap it up. So it doesn't look like we have any coming in. So thank you all for being here. And if there's any more questions we can answer about Can-Do, and this will be recorded too, so there'll be a version on our website as well.
Oh, wait, Rosie, we do have one question.
Okay.
Somebody's asking, are you emailing the PowerPoint presentation or at least a book list from the webinar?
We can email out the when we're done, we can email out a PDF of the slides.
Okay. All right. That's the only question.
Okay, great.
So on behalf of Rosie and the Can-Do team, I want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. If you would like to learn more about Can-Do Health Coaching, please visit our website at candohealth.org or call us at 952-914